Review Board. I am calling this meeting to order. Melissa, may we have a roll call, please? Here.
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 Thank you very much. Are there any changes to the agenda, board members or staff? Carly. Thank you very much. Any other changes? No other changes being? Is there an order to approve the agenda as just amended?
I would so move to approve the agenda as amended.
Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Next, we have minutes of May the 10th, 2022. Board members or staff, any changes to any of these minutes? Member Benvenue. And do you have board members? I'm going to remind you to please turn on your mics.
Should be
And
on
also,
now. Can you
if
hear me?
I'm going to call on you this evening, please raise your hand. Thank you.
Can you hear me
real
now?
hand.
Great. Okay, so on page 19, the last full paragraph, let's see, the second sentence where it says he said for the record, after record add that he disagreed with, and then continue the description of this, strike the word is, continue a ranch-style home, add the word which, and then continue is significant, strike the period, and then add because, and then continue with the next sentence. Some true ranch-style homes have come before the board. At the bottom of that same page, the last full sentence, where it says he agreed with the historic report, change agreed with to noted, so it reads he noted the historic report. Then on page 31, on the fifth paragraph, third sentence, it says he said the board has learned there is little difference in, add the words in insulation value, then continue with in the glass, add the word itself. The next sentence where it says it is a waste of resources to destroy windows, between destroy and windows, add older windows in favor of, and then continue with windows which typically last 20 years, and then add the words or less before the comma. On page 32, the second full paragraph, second sentence, where it says the energy consultant who presented in January said, strike the words there is no, and add, replace that with the word the, so it said the difference, then strike the words in the values of, and replace with in the panes themselves is the difference between, and then continue with R1, comma, 2 and 3. Skipping two paragraphs down, the first sentence where it says he thought the board as well, add the word did before as well. And then when it continues, believed it the desire for greater insulation value with sufficient justification, replace with the word was. So it reads, what desire for greater insulation value was sufficient justification, pardon me. On page 36, Under board discussion, second paragraph, second sentence, where it says, he said he differentiates this property from the previous case where the board bandied divided lights, replace the word bandied with mandated. The second sentence, where it says, or the structure is old, replace the words is old with as a whole. It continues that simulated divided lights become a problem, add, strike the period, add and then continue with, the board has the authority to mandate, and before the period, add the words true divided lights. I hope that was clear. That's all I have. Thank you.
Member Benvenu, any other changes? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve these minutes as
So moved.
amended.
A second.
Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Abstain?
Thank you, Melissa. We have 10 findings of fact and conclusions of law. Are there any changes to any of this? Member Capps.
I have a problem with the one on 619 Acequia Madre. And my concern is the following. First, you'll note that the draft findings do not include any finding that the exception criteria for the parapet change over the kitchen has been met. And this is correct because there were no findings. The board made no such findings. And I would note that the staff report failed to include the applicant's request for the parapet. And although the applicant did request the parapet change, they didn't, in their written submission, they presented evidence of only one of the three criteria was met. Only one of them. And then the applicant's testimony didn't discuss the criteria for the exception for the parapet at all, only the portal and the windows on the house. So, you know, the board failed to find that the exception criteria were met explicitly. The staff failed to include it in the presentation of the applicant's request, and the applicants failed to present the evidence. But I failed the most because I was chairing that meeting, and I didn't point out that this was a problem. And so, you know, I apologize to the board and to staff and to everybody that we didn't do it right, but it leaves this uncertainty as was the parapet change approved or not. And I would think we would benefit by doing it right so that the applicant isn't left in confusion. Thank you.
Any other comments in reference to this particular finding and conclusions? Member Guida.
For Vice Chair Katz, was the parapet in the packet? Was it drawn?
Yes, the parapet was definitely in the packet with the drawing, and the applicant testified about it, but it required an exception, and there was no testimony about, there's no evidence presented about two of the three exception criteria, and so that leaves, you know, a lack of evidence, and there was no explicit finding that the criteria for the parapet was met. There was explicit finding and discussion that the criteria for the portal and the windows were met, but not the parapet. It just sort of fell through the cracks a little bit there.
I know that my motion referenced the package as submitted.
Yes.
And, you know, I think my intent was to include that even though it wasn't specifically called out. We went through each and every exception criteria in making that motion. Whether we explicitly addressed the parapet, I don't recall. But, you know, I think in light of reviewing a number of exception criteria for the changes to the facade, that could be construed as being included.
Let me just ask Member Cass a question. Is this the same case that we had a discussion, the same discussion, a couple of meetings ago.
Well, it was,
Meetings ago.
it was before the board for the status and primary facades, and then it came back with the changes that they wanted to do to the building.
So what are you suggesting is the remedy to this?
I'm suggesting that we don't approve the findings, that we reopen the hearing or clarify the request and have some evidence presented. I mean, it's fine that evidence was presented about a bunch of exception criteria for some of the items that were presented, but we need the evidence that the criteria have been met for this change, to have this change.
Are you indicating that the applicant must come before the board?
I believe the applicant should come before the board and give the testimony.
Member Guida?
I fail to see how the exception criteria would be different for a detail of a facade. The motion talked about, in general, the changes to the facade that were being requested. I appreciate Vice Chair Katz's point about staff report not itemizing that issue perhaps, but we were all looking at the same drawings. This was presented to us as a whole, and I don't see picking threads at a sweater at this point, just to hear the same exception criteria be reviewed again.
Let me hear from Member Benvenu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wasn't at this hearing, so perhaps I'm out of order to be addressing this issue, but I do recall that in probably 2 years ago, this very issue did come before us, and that was when Lisa Roach was the division director, and her position was that raising the parapet of a primary facade did not require an exception, and that it was not considered an addition under our code. And I recall that specifically because after the fact, we had an exchange of emails about that issue because that seemed wrong to me at the time. And I eventually just personally came around to interpreting the code similarly, because that very same provision that speaks of additions also speaks of another word. It was, if I can find it.
Meantime, I'm going to ask Member Katz a question, and that is 619 contributing?
Yes.
Is contributing.
Member Beachhead has had her hand raised.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Thank you. I just wanted to know if maybe we could hear from staff. We did hear an exception request for revision to a primary facade, which is Parapet is part of. That was for the removal of the portal, and as I recall, to change the overhang on the roof was replaced with a parapet that matches the rest of the height of that facade. And so would this have been presented any differently with respect to the parapet detail, or would this be considered to be part of that same exception request for a revision to the primary facade?
It would have been part of the same exception criteria, and it was listed in that exception criteria, but it should have been itemized in the staff report. So that portion was missing. Otherwise, exception criteria in the drawing was there, and it was also there in the presentation.
I recall noting that the parapet was changing in that hearing. And in my mind, my vote included, that revision.
So you feel that the parapet issue was addressed?
Yes, with the packets and the discussion at the hearing.
Member Benvenu.
Sorry. Just to complete the thought, so remodeling was the other provision in that same, it distinguishes that ordinance between remodeling and additions, so this would be considered a remodeling under the prior administration's interpretation. So that was just a lead-in to say that it seems to me that it would be nice to have clarification from the city attorney and from the division director as to whether or not they believe an exception is required in this case.
Harley? Also, I want to introduce as we all know, Frank Rubelit is not here this evening, so we have another city attorney helping us out this evening, and that's Kyle. And Kyle, would you give us your last name?
Yes, Kyle Hibner.
Hibner?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So Carly, would you address the issue?
Madam Chair, Board, I do believe it does require an exception in this case. If the parapet is changing heights, not necessarily. But if it is changing roof profile, then yes. Now, when we do have misses in the staff report, if there's something missed, ideally we read it into the record in order to capture that at the hearing, because that does happen from time to time. Now, whether or not the case planner read it into the record, I know it was discussed, but I'd have to go back and review the video, that portion of the video.
I was not at that hearing, but I do think that the record needs to be clear and clean. And that means that the findings and conclusions have to state what we are addressing in reference to a particular application. So with all this discussion being said, I will entertain a motion as to the findings and conclusions, what we are adopting and what we are not.
Madam Chair, I would move to approve the findings and conclusions of all 9 of the 10 cases and not approve the findings on case 10, the 619 Acequia Madre.
Second. Is there a second? There is not a second, so the motion dies. I will entertain another motion. Mr. Guido.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the findings of fact and conclusions of law, all 10 as written.
And is there a second to this motion?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
Sorry, abstain.
Yes?
Abstain.
And I thought this meeting was going to go so smoothly.
Chair, have the
We have 2 abstains and 2 yeses. And staff is clearly saying that we need to address this specifically. That's how I understood you, correct?
That the board needs to address this specifically?
Yes. The exception criteria regarding the parapet. You felt that it was not addressed.
I did not say that, Madam Chair. I said that it requires an exception, and it is included in the same exception, the primary facade, changes to a primary facade.
So you felt that it was included.
I felt that it was included.
So if I have to vote, I will vote in favor of the motion. Okay. So next we go to matters from the public. Anyone from the public wishing to speak on anything right at the moment? It looks like the answer is no. Anything from staff?
Madam Chair, is this matters from staff, staff communications? Okay, yes, we do. First, just a little welcome back, and look forward to more information as we go to a potential hybrid model that would allow applicants to potentially call in on Zoom. I don't have any firm information on that yet, but keep your eyes on the website, and I'll be putting information out as we have it. It's just in process, and we're working on it. Second, the 2022 Heritage Preservation Award ceremony was last week. If you attended, thank you for attending. We had a great turnout. Let's see. Another item we have is that our senior planner position, that job posting will be closing on the 27th. So if you know anyone, please let them know. We will likely be hiring 2 staff members pretty soon. Our senior planner, Daniel Schwab, has decided to resign as of last week. We wish him we wish him well in his next endeavors. I'm not sure what those are yet, but if you see him around, wish him well. And then lastly, is just a question for Madam Chair. We have timed the public comment in the past. I am ready to do so if you would like. Just let me know. We will hear a little cell phone jingle. And that is all from staff.
Thank you very much. So we have nothing under old business, and we have 7 cases under new business. And yes, if you will help me with the 2-minute limit, and that pertains to the public, not to the applicants. And also, if you disagree with the decision that this board renders this evening, you do have the option to appeal to the City Council, and that would be done after the findings and conclusions have been approved, and you have 15 days after that to appeal. With that being said, we'll move to the first case this evening, and that's located at 200 Lincoln Avenue. May we hear that case, please? No. Yeah.
Okay, how about now?
Yes.
All right. Okay, on the agenda we have 2022-005307 HDRB. It's listed as 200 Lincoln Avenue, but the actual project location is along Sheridan Avenue. Sheridan Street. And Sheridan Street stretches between Marcy Street and Palace Avenue. And this project this is a city project, and it's a street improvement project with structures along. This is the existing bus shelters and existing conditions of the street. I'm going to go through this, and then we'll hear a little bit from the applicant. I've added this perspective to the presentation tonight. It wasn't in the packet, but this is from the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum. It's a rendering, and it would show the approximation of where the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum, that's set back. So that pushes it back quite a bit, and what you're seeing on the right side is just a very big little bit of the a little fade out of bus shelters. But again, this was provided by the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum to just kind of give an idea of that viewpoint. And that project will be coming forward later this summer. Okay, here's a plan view. We have brick improvements along the way, 4 bus shelters. Here, they're pretty small. There's tree wells. And some changing of the alignment there. And here's an example of the actual bus shelter in elevation view. I think there have been some questions regarding the porosity and openness of this, and you can see it's relatively open. Materials are steel. There's powder-coated steel gray panels, and they're quite dark for the vertical members and the flashing. Here is what the materials actually look like as we see them around town. A little example of where the tree wells would be on this side. And this will kind of show you what is under each of the shelters, so where the seats are located, and then a little bit of the paving. There's curb improvements as well, and lighting, street light design. Here are the material examples. Brick, again, the tree well, and the street light. And that's really the proposal. It's a little different kind of proposal. A lot of times we see renovations that are of a single structure, but this is all along that street. And with that, I can stand for a few questions, or we can go ahead and turn it over to the applicant to give a few more words about it.
Just to right there, Carly, board members, do any of you have clarification questions or any questions? Any other questions for Carly at this time? If not, it looks like no. We will hear from the applicant.
Can you hear me? Yeah. My name is Nicole Ramirez Thomas, and my address is 2227 Venice Drive, South Lake Tahoe, California. Madam Chair, board members, nice to see you in person.
Can you put that mic closer to your mouth?
I can.
Oh, yeah,
Like that.
please. Thank you.
See if I can extend it, but I won't. I do not have much to add in terms of what the project is, but I'm happy to answer questions. We do think that this will be a significant improvement to what is existing, all the way from the pavement up to the bus shelters. And the rendering of the George O'Keeffe Museum, which I'm going to go back to, we didn't include anything in the packet because we didn't have permission to use this drawing, but the city can because it's been, or HPD can because it's been submitted to them. And I think that the benefit of looking at this rendering is just that you'll see that the sidewalk is widened pretty significantly. And then the bus shelters are moved closer to the curb, and ultimately the Sheridan Avenue is going to be narrowed a little bit. And so there'll be one through lane and then a bus lane, and then it'll come out onto Palace Avenue. Same direction for traffic and everything. If you have any questions.
Just a comment that I think that this is quite an improvement to the area, and I think it'll serve the community very nicely. For the bus shelters, is there one side that is open and in the past it was enclosed on both sides?
Yeah, so the north and the south sides will be kind of closed with the panels, but both the east and the west sides will be open. And then there'll be kind of these divisions in between, for the different seating configurations. So both on the front, street frontage, and then on the back, which will be facing the George O'Keeffe Museum, that'll be open all the way through.
And there also will be plenty of lighting. I think that street needs lighting.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Correct?
Yep. Much more lighting, and then lighting design that's been approved by H Board previously and is consistent with the lights you see downtown.
Thank you, Nicole. Any other questions or comments, board members? Anyone from the public wishing to comment on this particular project? If so, come forward at this time. It appears not. I will entertain a motion. Member Benvenue or Member Beachside, either one of you.
I'll make a motion In case 2022-005307 HDRB at 200 Lincoln Avenue, I move to approve the application as submitted.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 Thank you very much, and thank you, applicants. The next case is at 510 Apodaca Hill, and that's Carly's case as well. This is a non-contributing application.
Okay. Madam Chair, members of the board, so this is case number 2022-005169 HGRB. As you may remember, a few weeks ago, at 510 Apodaca Hill, a demolition, a downgrade was approved, then followed by a demolition of the standing structure. I'll show a couple photographs of this, but this, see, the outline is a little different than what we have because it's of the parcel map. It's slightly different there, so there's a little jog there. But that's outlined. It's a very long lot. And it's behind 507 and 508 Apodaca Hill. And so if you remember looking at the structure several weeks ago, this structure was approved for demolition. And it was once that lot was once part of 508. Okay. We're looking at the site plan here. And that structure is still standing, but they're moving forward with the request. Okay, existing and proposed plan. So again, this is in the downtown and Eastside Historic District. The proposal is to construct a 1,015 square foot single family residence. The maximum allowable height is 15 feet and 6 inches. The proposal is at 14 feet. You can see it staggers quite a bit and is a very long structure there. And here is a plan enlargement. I'm going to just go back up, and you can see that it's sandwiched between these other structures and behind the existing structure there at 508. Okay. So what we'll see are no existing elevations, just proposed, and this is the proposed south elevation. There are no divided lights, as you can see. I'm sorry, this is also the north elevation on the bottom. There is a corner window there. The proposed east elevation, there's the proposed west elevation. So these doors are glass inserts with frames. Here's the proposed floor plan, so you can get a little bit better idea of where that corner window is. The stucco is proposed as adobe. That's the color. The windows are Hartford green, and this is a depiction of the light fixture on the left. Staff recommends approval of the project as proposed, as it meets the standards for the downtown and east side and all districts. One last note on this is that the project really hinged on public visibility, and that's how we saw it. With that, Wyndham Carlisle is the applicant. I can stand for some questions if you would like to give those now, or turn it over to the applicant, Madam Chair.
So the public visibility you indicated is minimal?
Extremely minimal. Really, you can only see it from the private drive.
And the
On their own
applicant
driveway.
is wanting no divided lights, is that correct?
That's correct.
And I can ask the applicant why. Thank you. Any other questions? Member Katz?
The 3-foot rule also hinges on public visibility?
That is correct, it does.
Thank you.
Other questions? If the applicant will get sworn in. Yes, Carly? Okay.
I wanted to make sure I wasn't walking away too soon.
No, you're not.
My name is Wyndham Carlisle. I reside at 369 Montezuma Avenue, Santa Fe, Mexico. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, members of the staff. I'm glad to be here in person again. Probably too short for me. I just want to reiterate my position as not as the designer of the building, but as the applicant here. I've been authorized to speak for the owner, who is the designer, and make any accommodations that the board requires. So I do know the two questions that I heard initially were whether the property is visible from the public, and it is entirely not. And I know that you've all been there on the field trip. The only location in which you can see it is when you park in the actual spot for parking in the private driveway. The applicant has requested to not have divided lights purely as a matter of preference, not as a matter of design. And also the corner window which you see in the bathroom there was an obvious jeopardy of the 30-inch rule from the corner to glazing, but was requested by the owner in terms of just opening that corner of the structure up, because as you saw on the site plan, the building narrows down as it heads towards the east, and the designer felt like to have more glazing on that side would make the feeling of the space more open. That said, I stand for questions.
Board members, questions or comments? Can you put up the elevations? And it appears that the board members don't have any questions right now. Anyone from the public wishing to comment on this particular application? No one. Well, moving right along, I will entertain a motion. Member Katz.
Yes, in case number 2022-005169 HDRB at 510 Apodaca Hill, I would move to approve the application as submitted.
Guida seconds.
Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Carlisle.
Thank all of you. Good evening.
Next case is Angela's case. It's located at 645 Weber Street. Angela, may we hear from you?
Good evening. Okay, before us we have case 005232, which is 645 Weber Street, which is in the Don Gaspar Area Historic District. This case is about a sign, and just to locate or to place us. Just getting used to new technology that I used to know before the Zoom. Okay, so this is where the blue circle is. Oh, I don't know where my cursor is. Where the blue circle is, the egg blue egg, and the is actually catty corner from that is Wood Gormley Elementary School, and the ball field. The playground is right across the street from the subject property, which is formerly the First Christian Church. And the applicants have applied to replace the sign that's existing with a new sign. So within the site, it's along Weber Street, and the red box is the approximate location of the new sign on the property. The building, before I go further, is non-contributing to the Don Gaspar Area Historic District. It was originally built in 1942, described as contemporary Spanish Pueblo Revival style. A large addition was added in 1962, and as I said, the subject of this application is the sign that they are proposing. The new sign reflects their image and new name, which they have, this new congregation has arrived at after a long visioning process involving members of their community and the wider Santa Fe community. The applicant is the Open Circle, which was formerly known as the First Christian Church of Santa Fe and has stood in the historic district for over 8 decades. The new church, the Open Circle, this is the existing. Proposes a new sign, which has an open circular shape with soft rainbow-hued rays radiating outward, and the lowercase letters are simple and modern. I'm going to let the applicant present further, or stand up with me here and use my slides to present the simple presentation that you all had prepared.
My name is Tiffany Curtis, and I live at 641 Weber Street. So good evening, everyone. Hi. I am Reverend Tiffany Curtis. I'm the pastor of the Open Circle. This is Mitchell. He is the secretary of our church board and is the one who's done a ton of work on this application process with the help of Annette Vigil, who did our redid our site plan because it was old and very faint and not visible, and also helped us submit our application. There's also several other members of our community here supporting, so thank you to you all. So I first wanted to just thank you all for what you do to preserve the unique history of this beautiful place that we all call home. And I know that you've read our application materials that we submitted, as well as comments submitted online by community members in support. So I really wanted to just provide some background and context for our application for this exception. As Angela shared, the Open Circle is a church. We are a growing historic congregation on Weber Street in the Don Gaspar Historic District. And in 2023, the Open Circle will celebrate its 90th year of continuous presence in Santa Fe. In 1933, from what we know from our records, a resident named Ferguson of Santa Fe first established a group of 39 members, and they met in homes in Santa Fe. And then in 1937, that lot was purchased near the Roundhouse, and the first worship service was held there in 1940. And over the years, the church membership ebbed and flowed, but the church was always committed to being part of the Santa Fe community and making a difference. By 2014, the church had dwindled so much that they were sadly considering selling the property. They had brought in realtors to look at it and closing the church. However, with the help of our denominational leadership, I was called at the end of 2016 as the new pastor of our church with the hope of doing something new and revitalizing this historic church. Until 2021, our name was First Christian Church of Santa Fe, and as part of our transformational process as a community, we discerned this new name together, the Open Circle. This name honors our heritage as part of our Disciples of Christ tradition and also communicates clearly who we are now as a vibrant, welcoming, and unique church community that is alive, active, and celebrating and welcoming of diversity. So as part of this process, we collectively created this logo together, visually representing the diversity, growth, and welcome of the Open Circle community. We redesigned our website, we updated our social media presence, and we designed this new sign for our building. All of these projects have involved extensive community engagement and leadership development. They've helped us revitalize our mission and our identity. Our membership is growing now, multi-generational and diverse, and reflects the values of our wider Santa Fe community. We're also very involved in the local community. Our church building is used by a number of different community groups, including a Buddhist meditation group, the Peace Building nonprofit, Tomorrow's Women, disability advocacy, 12-step recovery groups. And these are real relationships and collaborations. We strive to be part of the community. We're also involved in immigration work, homelessness, food security, disaster relief. We work with many local nonprofits, including St. Elizabeth's, Casa Milagro, the Adelante program, and we're a member congregation of the Interfaith Leadership Alliance, New Mexico Conference of Churches, and I serve on the Santa Fe County Board for the FEMA Emergency Food and Shelter Program. So our hope is to continue to be good neighbors to the Santa Fe community for years to come by cultivating a space of hospitality and welcome, an open circle for healing, prayer, meditation, and transformation. Our logo that you see on this sign is a visual expression of all that we are as a community, our embrace of diversity, of beauty, of welcome and inclusion. The colors, the multicolored aspect represents the beauty of nature, the beauty of people, diverse people, the full spectrum of life, and our vision for healing and peace in our community. And it's an investment in our determination to fulfill our mission of inclusivity and healing through community building. So we hope that our logo will come to be known as the years pass as a symbol of hope, love, and transformation, synonymous with who we are as a local faith community. So again, I want to thank you for what you do for our community, preserving the unique historic heritage of Santa Fe. And in many ways, as the leader of a church, I feel like I relate to your mission because we're also striving to balance the honoring of tradition and history with an evolving reality that we can continue to live into as diverse communities, responding to the needs of our times now. So thank you all. If you have specific questions about the design, again, Mitchell can speak to those, but I wanted to provide that context, and thank you all for your work.
Curtis, thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you for what you indicated the church does for the community. Let me see if any board members have questions, and I will remind the board that this application is asking for exceptions because regarding signs, you can only use black, white, and then another color that would match the building, and they are asking for exceptions. If you obviously have read your packet and see if the exceptions have been met. Any questions? Member Benvenu.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I echo Madam Chair's comments. I commend you for your mission and the work that you're doing, which I wholeheartedly support. And I find that the colors on the rainbow are not only integral to your to the conception that you have of who you are and what you do, but they're quite subtle in this particular iteration. So I personally think that they easily meet the exception criteria. And I'd also note that, interestingly, what's coming before us is not even really specific to our historic district, if I understand it correctly, because our historic district actually says that colors and design are left at the discretion of the applicant. The specific called out section of the sign ordinance, and it's actually in the general ordinance that we're restricted to 3 colors, which of course I understand that because that's a more specific requirement, that also applies in the historic district and to us as well. But nonetheless, just from our perspective as historic preservationists on the board, it is interesting to me that we actually have a broader availability of design options as long as they don't clash with the historic district. The only thing I would mention, though, is now that I see the color rendering, I see that the weathered wood background also has some multiple colors, at least in the rendering. I personally find that a little bit potentially in competition with the logo itself, and calls a lot more attention to the multiple colors. Is that actually part of the design, or is that just a mock-up for purposes?
That is a mock-up done by the sign designer, and the idea is to use reclaimed wood. It's not to have color on the wood. That was just what he put in there. We actually reached out to him about maybe changing that to just reflect sort of a unitonal reclaimed wood look, but there wasn't time to change that. But that was in his rendering. That was just a mock-up. Yeah, but we do want to use reclaimed wood. That was in our application to kind of represent this fusing together of old and new, but not with colors on it. Yeah.
Great.
Sorry for that misrepresentation.
No, I thought that's what I understood from the application, and it wasn't until I saw this slide that I thought maybe it was otherwise, but I did assume that was the case, so thank you.
Member Greta.
I have a technical question. I'm looking at the side view as presented in the packet. The acrylic circle is set behind the plane of the sign. The plane of the sign has a cutout in it, and then that sits behind it. Okay, thank you. And reclaimed wood on the front of that plane. What's on the back side of that plane? Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? None. Anyone from the public wishing to comment on this particular case? If you'll just come. Oh, that was great. That's what we like. A short comment. I will entertain a motion. Member Benvenu.
I'll make a motion. Let's see if I can find the correct case. So in case 2022-005-232 HDRB is 645 Weber, I move that, consistent with the presentation that has been made today and the information in the application, that the design be approved as submitted on the condition that the reclaimed wood background not include additional painted colors, but be wood tones, and would include in the motion that all applicable exception criteria have been met in this case.
Thank you, Member Benvenu. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second the motion, I think.
Yeah. You're seconding the motion. Yes, Carly.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, to interrupt. I just wanted to make sure I do have a public comment here that did come in, so
Okay.
I need to read it into the record. Sorry for the
Yes,
delay.
would you please?
My name is Tiagro Arias. I'm sure I'm butchering that. Sorry. I am the pastor of the Advent Life Church, co-president of the Interfaith Leadership Alliance of Santa Fe, and a resident of Santa Fe. The Open Circle is a community of faith that has worked to serve the city of Santa Fe in many ways. They represent a little light in the city providing a safe place for worship, working for the well-being of those pushed to the margins, and creating an inclusive space for people from any background to feel safe. While the change of the name of the community of faith can seem like a mere cosmetic change, as the pastor of a congregation that has recently changed its name, I can safely say that such a change represents much more than that. A name change means discerning new ways to understand the identity of the community of faith, and it also means a renewed commitment to serve and work for others. Please take this into consideration as you work on their request. What may seem like a simple change truly is a sign of renewed commitment to serve and help the community of Santa Fe. I support the Open Circle and ask that you allow them to display their beautiful rainbow hue color logo on their sign as they cherish a historic Santa Fe property in the Dongus Bar District.
Thank you very much, Carly. That will become part of the record, and also the record should indicate that there were 3 members from the audience that did not speak, but they indicated their support for the project. Member Beachside.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to ask for a friendly amendment to the motion, just for the record, to clarify that the exception criteria number 2, which staff disagreed with, has been met specifically because not being able to represent its interest through signage is a hardship to the applicant, and that the sign is a visual representation of their identity. I find that criteria has been met.
I believe that the maker of the motion indicated that all criteria had been met. Member Guida.
I have a friendly amendment just to be clear in the packet that the backside of the sign would be clad in the same non-colored reclaimed wood as is being used in the front, and that the packet be updated and submitted to staff.
Will you accept that? That is accepted. Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 Thank you, and thank you. Next case is located at 1612 Cerro Gordo. This is Angela's case.
Okay, moving over to 1612 Cerro Gordo Road, which is case number 5175. This is for new construction on a vacant lot that slopes south from Cerro Gordo Road in the downtown and Eastside Historic District. It's accessed from Cerro Gordo Road down a driveway tucked into the northern portion of the site. A guest house was approved in 2021 by you all. It's under construction on the southeast corner of the lot. And I'm going to bring the applicant up here to present his project and show the slides for him. I'll just state that it's a 3,105 square foot single family residence with a 2-car garage. And I am going to jump to my recommendation, which is that I recommend approval of the proposed project because I find that the application complies with the general design standards for all historic districts and the downtown and Eastside historic standards, design standards.
Angela, I have a question for you. Can this proposed project be seen from a public way? Because it goes down, Cerro Gordo sits up here, and then it goes down a driveway, correct?
Correct.
And then it's over to the right-hand
Over
side?
to the right, which is tucked back there. It might be slightly visible from atop Cerro Gordo Road, but it's so tucked into the side of the hill that it's not very publicly visible. The roof may be from Cerro Gordo.
Thank you. Any other clarification questions for Angela at this time? If there's not, applicant or applicants, please come forward.
to see you all in person. Again, I'm Sheb Mirando. I'm the applicant agent, and I live at 1301 Dick Levine Street. The owner, Betsy Porter, is with me as well. We designed the house together. It was really a collaboration, so Betsy will be here as well. Say your name.
Yes, Elizabeth Porter at 14 Bosque Azul, Santa Fe, New Mexico. And also thank you for your good work.
Please speak right into that mic.
Apologies, yeah. It was easier on video, I suppose.
Yeah.
That being said, nice to be here in person. You know, our own view that from Cerro Gordo, it doesn't seem that you could see even the roof when we put up the story poles, but it could be a little close. It's, as Angela said, there's the approved studio it's in the far corner of the site, so the layout on the site, we really tried to take that into account to give that studio enough room to have a decent yard between it. On the east side of the property, there's some low-height neighboring rural, sort of old Santa Fe style building with a tin roof. And on the west, the closest neighbor is a stucco mass with angled passive solar roofing elements, as was the rage in the 70s when it was built. The house, there was the mention of over 3,000 square feet. That's a total roofed. There's 3 portals. The heated size is, I believe, 2,040. The house has 4 main masses that are terraced. Part of the reason for that is when you come down the road, because of the constraints of the site, we wanted the garage that you first come in and see to be the lowest mass, so that's at 11 feet 6 inches, and then it terraces up from that to the center mass on the great room is at our height average, which was 15 foot 2 inches. I should note on the agenda, it lists the maximum height of our proposal and the height average incorrect. It's 15.2 in both cases. To the south, as it addresses the view from the site, we have a larger portal that is we propose with entirely of steel construction with a patina clear-coated finish, so rusted finish, both with corrugated rusted metal on the portal itself, the structure being steel, and there's also a small entry portal on the main entry of the building and a small portal off of the master going north. You can see in the elevations here the portals south, and then on the east there's a screen wall in front of the main entry that is a main support of that entry portal, which has an opening in it. The openings are all 2x2 or 2-3 divided lights, and they are simulated divided lights from Sierra Pacific is what we proposed. It's sort of a higher end simulated divided light with backing in between. And they're we proposed them in a bronze finish, aluminum metal clad. None of the roofs other than the portals are visible. It's all stucco coated parapets. And we proposed it in El Rey cementation stucco in La Luz finish. The only other finish would be the front door, which is in a stained Doug fir. Yeah. With that, we would wait for your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Milano. Any questions for the applicant? Member Camps?
On the south facade, if we could bring that up again, it's not clear to me what the top of the portal is. Can you explain that?
It's the portal roof, which is sloped at a 1 to 12.
Ah, okay, thank you.
Yes, yeah.
That helps. My other question is the corners of the building. What is the circumference of the curve on the corners?
We would propose it as a middle ground radius.
A what?
A middle ground radius, a bullnose radius.
Do we have inches?
Oh, in inches?
Yeah.
Well, after the finish application, to be honest, we didn't have a specification in inches.
Okay, that's fair. Thanks.
Any other questions, board member? Member Beachside.
Thank you. I might just ask if you know, or you could tell us the dimensions of the posts on the portals?
I believe they're 6 by 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes they get quite skinny, and we've objected to that in the past, but that
Yes.
sounds like a good dimension to me. Thank you.
Member Benvenue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just further on those two exact points, the corners and the posts. The guest house, we were just there visiting, obviously, today, and that came before us a year or so ago, if I'm not mistaken, for approval. That house has very strongly rounded corners and battered parapets and wooden posts. Are you, this one seems to be potentially differentiating itself from that? Is that your intention?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, we saw it as a fairly mixed site stylistically, and that the guest house went well with what it was close to, and this was making somewhat of a departure. Yes.
Okay. It's true that it's not visible from the road, which I think should be taken into account in this case, or at least very minimally so, but it is a rather important, very rural location in Cerro Gordo, in the Santa Fe River Canyon, right on the acequia, and so that does give me some concern about approving what you describe as a contemporary Santa Fe house. And those would be the two issues that I would have, would be the radius of the corners as well as the steel versus wooden posts.
Thank you, Member Benvenue. If there are no other questions at this time or comments, I will entertain, not a motion, but comments from the public. Anybody? Here, I saw Mr. Eddie stand up, so I thought he was going to run down here. Oh, no. That's better, Mr. Eddie. No. Yes, Member Beachside.
Sorry, I do have one more question about the garage door material. Could you tell us what that is, please?
It's actually not specified in this, I noticed. We would propose it as a pre-manufactured simulated wood overhead door. I could give you a model number if you wanted, but...
That's okay. I just mostly was wondering if it's metal or appears to be wood.
No, I don't. We wouldn't, we wouldn't. But we did show it with lights. Yeah.
If there are no further, yes, Member Guida.
And just a follow-up question on the garage door. So yes, lights along the top panel, and the simulated wood is a flush face on the.
Correct.
Great. Madam Chair, I think this is a smart project and well-designed, and I'm ready to make a motion.
Go for it.
Okay, so in case 2022-005-175 HDRB 1612 Cerro Gordo Road, I move that the board approve the project as submitted.
I will second.
Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. And thank you, applicant. The next case is located at 516 Camino Rancheros, and this is Carly's case.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. This is 516 Camino Rancheros in the downtown Eastside Historic District. You can see there's a gate right here. It's just off Camino Rancheros. The house, you can't see quite well from this image, but you'll see later, is in a bit of a U shape. And I've got a couple outlines of where specifically we're looking. Just these elevation photos kind of key together. What you can see from the street, you do have a clear visual of this garage door. You can't quite see any of this little bit of the southwest corner. I'll make note of this particular photo because we'll come back. That's where some of the work shows up. And these elevation photos as well. There is a removal of or rather a demolition of a portal included in this proposal. It is built in the late 1980s. This kind of rambling U shape going on here. And there is an attached guest house and detached garage. This is the site plan. I'm sorry, not very close there. And we're looking at the existing and proposed plan. I might have skipped that we are in the downtown Eastside Historic District, so just going to go back and mention that again if I didn't. So what we're looking at here, part of the proposal is to demolish the portal, but make this area into a bit of a hallway connecting the rest of the house, and then create a connection between the garage and the rest of the house right here. A little bit of an addition there. So in total, on the north facade right here, we have 156 square foot addition. And then over here on the right side, we're looking at a 316 square foot addition onto the west facade. The additions will match in height at 12 feet. And it is a non-contributing structure, as you might have surmised from the built date of the late 1980s. Let's see, here are our proposed and existing elevations for the south facade. You can see that connection where the building is being connected right there. The windows, the associated windows that are proposed. And then we're looking at the east facade here, where you see, again, you see that prominent garage door from the gate from the roadway, and not quite much else is really visible at all from there. Let's see, and you do see the proposed addition right here of that 316 square foot. Let's see, this is from the north elevation, and again, that connector piece, the connector addition. This is just to kind of crop in on the north elevation. Same view, but it's a little bit closer. But you'll see, again, there's the proposed addition and proposed addition there, that connection piece. And here we're looking at the west facade. It's hard to see this change here. It blends in, and I don't think you do have any visibility of change, or you can't see those two changes in the west facade at all. All right, now we're getting to the exterior stucco, the suede, there's sage brown for the windows and door cladding. And for the exterior sconces, this piece was not in your packet. The name is in the packet, but there is the visual to go with it. Staff are recommending this for approval as it complies with the downtown and Eastside standards and all the standards for all districts. I will stand for questions, and then we can turn it over to the applicant.
Thank you, Carly. Any questions for Carly, board members? It appears not. Can we have the applicant sworn in?
I do.
Thank you for speaking.
Lauren Trick, 436 West San Francisco Street. I just wanted to explain that the basis of the project was that currently you have to go from the garage through the courtyard to get in the house. So this allows for an internal connection through the house. Secondly, the hallway that's on that north side that we're replacing is currently less than 3 feet wide. Don't ask me why a modern house would have that, but it does. And then thirdly, the infill part, the 350 square foot infill, is to create a master bedroom suite on the first floor. Right now, the master suite's on the second floor, and the owners are quite elderly. So this gives them more accessibility to the house. Questions?
Thank you, Lauren. Any questions for the applicant? I have a curiosity question. What is the square footage of the entire house?
You know, I honestly don't know.
You don't know? It's quite a large house.
Pretty large,
So,
yeah.
just curious. Member Guida.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Lauren, you know, all this stuff is pretty straightforward. Struck me when we were looking at the photos, the large package unit on the south side. It's highly visible. Is the project doing anything about that?
No, it's not really visible from anywhere, but it's cooling a part of the house that we're not touching.
Thank you.
Nothing else? Anyone from the public wishing to comment? No one? I will entertain a motion. Member Katz.
Yes, in case number 2022-005184, HDRB 5612 Rancheros. I would move to approve the application as submitted.
Guido will second.
Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 Thank you. Next case is Carly's, and it's at 571 Garcia.
Okay, this is case number 2022-005183, HDRB. It is at 571 Garcia Street. It's in the downtown and Eastside Historic District. You can see it faces Garcia Street on one side, and then Johnson Lane on the other. This house is a single-family residence in the back, and then it has a guest house in the front. The single-family residence is contributing It was built in 3 different phases, and the primary residence is contributing, and the guest house is non-contributing. We're looking at some west elevations here. There are lots of corners and small facades, so the applicant put together quite a few photographs for this. We're looking at some north elevations here. And some east elevations. Okay. Here's a historic photograph from the HCPI. And the west facade is noted as the primary facade in past cases. Let's see. It is 1,675 square feet. And the project, here is our site plan. Most of the project is going on right here in that little L shape that we're looking at. And what we're really looking at is a pergola that attaches to the guest house, but does not attach to the main house. There is some raising of there is going to be a raising of the parapet in order to accommodate that connection. And you can see it's right here. And then here's another view. And it is a wood construction. The proposal also includes metal trellis. Again, you can see that raised parapet right here in the back there. It also includes some mechanical units on the top that are not seen. Just want to make sure that's noted. Okay. There's another view from the south facade elevation, and that's that mechanical unit right here, replacement air conditioner. And again, another view of the pergola. Okay, west elevation. There's lots of elevations in this package because it is a house with many, many facades, and you can see that raised parapet right there. And then we have the existing west elevation and east elevation in the courtyard. We only have those, not the proposed on this side, because nothing is changing there. All right, here are the colors. This is also added for the presentation, was not in the packet. I believe we have the information in the packet, but not the visuals. So the wood color is a weathered gray-brown, and then we have a steel color of oiled rust for the trellis. We're recommending this for approval as it complies with the downtown and Eastside Historic District standards, along with all historic district standards. I can stand for questions or go ahead and turn over to the applicant.
Thank you, Carly. The portion that is going to be raised on the parapet, that's going to be raised by how much?
I have 1 foot 11 inches, I believe. I want to make sure that's correct with the applicant, but that's
Clarify with the applicant.
in the staff.
Any other questions of clarification for Carly? Member Benjamin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I'm just trying to figure this project out a little bit. The oddity in viewing it was that the primary facade is, I'm not sure why it was the one designated. It's very difficult to see. You don't see it at all from Garcia, and you see it from the side street. But even then, it's a rather narrow view. You're never looking face onto it unless you're in the interior of the property. All that said, though, it does seem to me this trellis will completely cover the view of the primary facade, rendering it almost invisible as a facade. So how do you square those two things? I understand that it's not technically attached to the primary facade, so it's not an addition, but it certainly seems to me it's hard to consider this a primary facade any longer with this trellis covering it.
Madam Chair, members of the board, I think this one's a little difficult because our records show that it does have a primary facade on it. Can't quite find what case it was assigned in, but it is in the staff reports. It is noted in our documents. Yet the guest house at some point was added in front of it. And so while this project does not attach to that primary facade, the question that I raised was, should we go for a status on this, or a status and look at the primary facades again? It is a small case with a pergola, and then the other side of that is that was also when the case planner who had this case that I took over has worked with the applicant to do and decided not to do that. And so part of the decision was, being that it is not a large change to the building, I went ahead and moved forward without the status, decided to move forward without the status, or re-look at the status, rather, case.
Okay. Well, that's very helpful, because I find it difficult, if not impossible, to approve the project with that being the primary facade. It would be a lot easier to approve it if we had a status review and potentially had a different primary facade come out of that status review, or potentially even a downgrade, I suppose, if the primary facade has been so obstructed by the guest house that it's no longer contributing. So those are my thoughts at this time. Thanks.
Thank you, Member Benvenue. Any other thoughts or questions for Carly at this time? Will the applicant please come forward and give sworn in?
My name's Esteban Trujillo. My address is 133 West Houghton Street, Santa Fe, New Mexico, 87505. Hello.
Good evening, Mr. Trujillo. What do you have to tell us about this project?
Well, I worked with Daniel on this project, and we had the question was like pulling the client wanted to have a pergola in that little small space, because that is the only space they have, because the property's really, really tight. And so part of the strategy was to pull the pergola away, and that way we had to create a structure. Now, on the guest house side, we can attach the pergola to the guest house because it's non-contributing. So that was the whole premise of that discussion and design.
Can you describe the pergola and also the trellis in terms of their measurements, in terms of height and width?
Yeah, the pergola that has the structure in front of the primary facade is I'm trying to keep the structure very light, and it's going to have to be engineered. And the wood is going to be the pergola, the wood that actually creates the pergola, is going to be a kind of a hand-hewed wood, and that has to also be engineered, but I'm trying to keep it light. I would say by 8 by 8 or, 6 by 8, keep those proportions more vertical maybe. And then the height is of the pergola itself is in between the height of the openings, the vertical openings, like the windows, and the top of the parapet. So
What are you estimating that to be?
I can tell you what it is.
Madam Chair, it's identified as 10'2" on the drawings,
Say that again.
identified as 10'2"
10'2".
as maximum
Thank you.
patio to the underside of the pergola.
We got the measurement of Mr. Trujillo.
Oh, yeah, here it is. It's, oh, you got it?
10'2"? 10 feet 2 inches?
10 foot 2 inches, yeah, thank you.
Member Guida, did you have something?
Yes, I do have a question for Mr. Trujillo. Was the original thought to not have any posts?
The original, that's what the client wanted. She didn't, she had showed me an image where they were, the actual beams were attached to each structure. And Daniel and I discussed how we could do it without that, and he felt that it would be more amenable to actually separate the two and not touch the primary structure facade.
Yeah, we recently saw a recommendation from Daniel on not attaching a front porch to a primary facade that wasn't a good idea. And I don't know that this is a good idea here. I think, you know, I see what the design intent is. I think for this thing to be minimal. To me, the beam, the heavy beam, the steel corbels, the posts, all of that stuff, you know, contribute to a heaviness just to meet a very technical 3-inch gap between the pergola and the contributing structure. To me, that's an unfortunate compromise that is, you know, meeting the letter of the law, but otherwise detracting from the design of the space and the character of the district. I don't know that it's necessarily a good idea to embed the pergola rafters between the two buildings because they're moving separately. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I have a plan for that. I'm basically going to hide the structure on the guest house side. I'm going to hide the structure, and I'm not going to. They're going to be attached with stucco, but they're not going to be embedded in the structure because of the problem with wood that it touches the structure will damage the structure, you know, eventually.
Right.
And you know how people are with maintaining, you know, wood, and so that was my strategy for that end. And ideally, I would love to do the same on the other facade, just to get rid of the post because the space is small. It's a very small space, and and every square inch I could get would be better, you know.
Yeah. So you know, I think what is, you know, there's a design by committee aspect to what we're looking at, where it's attached on one side and not on the other. You know, if it was purely a kind of technical thing where you were concerned about the movement of the buildings, I would say make the whole thing freestanding. If you're not concerned about the differential movement between the two structures, I would say make the whole thing just span the gap between the two buildings and not have any beams or columns in the patio space. That would be my preference.
That would be my preference as well.
And I think it detracts less from the contributing building in a similar way to what we discussed on that house on Upper Canyon Road. These are reversible improvements.
Thank you, Member Guida. Any other thoughts or questions? Member Beachside?
Okay, thank you. I'll just be brief. I agree with those comments because I find myself distracted by the steel corbels and the post. And I'll just say that while I guess an exception was not requested, I think it could be granted because I went on the field trip today. That primary facade is really not visible, and we walked around the entire property between the large entry gate and the closeness of the guest house. We've already lost the visual contribution of that primary facade, so I think probably a status downgrade would be appropriate if that came before us as well.
Any other questions or comments? Anyone from the public wishing to comment? I see Mr. John Eddy coming forward.
My
name is, excuse me, my name is John Eddy. My address is number 14 Avenida Campo Verde, Santa Fe, 87506. This is an interesting case only in that, and I've seen this happen before with the board, where you are ruling on something and potentially creating a de facto downgrading of the status at the same time, which was brought up earlier. So I'd like to see you guys be really careful about that aspect of it. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Eddy, for your comments. It appears no one else from the public is going to comment. I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I guess I'd like to ask Carly for some direction on this case. The facade that's the contributing structure that's facing this courtyard or space between two buildings is designated as primary, or have primary facades not yet been designated?
Madam Chair, members of the board, it's in our staff reports that it's the west facade. Now, the practice of assigning primary facades, I think, was rather loose in the past. I'm not sure that this is exactly an appropriate facade to be considered primary. I'm not sure whether it should be a downgrade. I think that requires some research, and then staff can present an appropriate path forward. Now, the way to do that, the first potential hearing that can go on is June 28th, because if it happens to be that a status downgrade is appropriate, then it would take that long to do the noticing to the neighbors as required.
Would you advise that path?
I would. In fact, it's one of the cases that was originally on this agenda. I took a similar path on.
Thank you, Carly, for those comments. Did you have something, Member? Yes?
I was just agreeing and would make a motion to postpone till June 28th for the review of the status and the primary facades.
Roll call vote. Member Benvenu.
Yes.
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 Thank you very much. So, Mr. Trujillo, we'll see you again on the 28th when we review this for status.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you. Bye.
You're welcome. So the last case this evening is located at 330 Don Cubero Place, and this is Angela's case.
Angela, would you speak into the microphone? Thank you.
Pardon me. 330 Don Cubero Place is the subject of this case. To a slide. And it is located, not there. Off of Don Cubero Place. It is in the Don Gaspar Area Historic District. The building is designated contributing, and the wall is included in that contributing status. This house is set back quite a bit from the street, this lot. It's a large lot, which is enclosed by this white stucco yard wall with the latias on the top. It's undergone alterations that include a large addition referring to the structure, which is contributing. The historic building inventory form includes that presence of, that stucco yard wall. The applicant requests to reconstruct portions. It's too hard to see, I've noticed. We're going to make these bigger now next time. To reconstruct portions of the white stucco yard wall, including the latias, as it existed before an underground sewer project was undertaken and portions of the yard wall were removed. Take it from the top a little bit better. The site plan shows the house with the red kind of staple that I've put in there. That is the yard wall in relation to the house and to the street. It's a little bit more of a close-up, and that is an elevation. So the applicant went through a sewer project, unfortunately, that led to the applicant being here today. They began to reconstruct the yard wall as it had been, which was approximately 6 feet high, which included the latias on the top of the white stucco yard wall. The original yard wall varied in height from 3 feet 4 inches on the east side to 4 feet 10 inches on the west side. And the original wall was built along with the house in 1938. The row of about a 1.5 foot latias was attached to the top sometime in the 80s, bringing the yard wall to a height of approximately 6 feet. The latias, like I said, were added in the 80s. The maximum allowable height for fences and yard walls in this streetscape is 4 feet 6 inches. The row of latias attached to the top of the wall bring the wall into nonconformance with the code per section 14-5.2A6. The applicant wishes to reconstruct the yard wall as it existed before the sewer project and requests an exception for height to exceed the maximum allowable height in this streetscape, this applicable streetscape. And these are more pictures of the streetscape. What you're seeing is the yard wall as it was without the latias, but they want to put the latias back up. And so the applicant's before you for this reason, because this work was undertaken without a permit.
Thank you. Angela, the house is contributing. Was the wall designated contributing as well?
It's part of the contributing status of the structure, so it's a contributing structure.
And right now, there are no latias on the wall.
Right now, there aren't. Well, I mean, I'll let the applicant explain the sequence of events. I think some of the latias, they were beginning to put them back up when they were stopped, issued a stop work order, and told to come to the board to request them.
And would you kindly describe the streetscape?
Yes, absolutely. It is so Don Cabero is a main street, and then this is Don Cabero Place. It's a short street that truncates in an alley. It is predominantly low yard walls that look like the neighbors in that picture, the low brown one you see right there. All of the yard walls are low, except for one next door, which is a higher yard wall, which is a non-historic high yard wall, meaning it was built sometime less than 50 years ago and does not meet the height standards per our code.
Thank you, Angela. Yes, Member Guida.
Angela, just 2 clarification questions. The height of the stucco portion of the wall is not in question here. It's not we're not considering an exception for that. It's just for the latia portion above 4'6", correct?
Correct.
Okay. And thank you. And the Does this house have a backyard?
This is its yard. This is both its front and back. It has 0 lot line on the back, which is Houghton. So it's an unusually, it's different from,
From the other houses?
correct. It has this large orchard, which is part of its historic status, the garden, et cetera.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Trujillo, you're already sworn in, so you have the floor.
It's really an unfortunate situation, but the situation arose from the sewer line being located in the wrong location, because it's actually on West Houghton. And so they destroyed the wall, just, 8 feet of it. And then they didn't do it voluntarily. They just did it because it needed to be done, and they discovered that the sewer was on the backside of the property. So that was the temporary destruction of the wall was necessary to necessary to repair the sewer line. So that was it. Let's see. They were restoring the wall, which they did, and they were putting the fence back up because the fence needed to be put up because it was in disrepair anyway. And when they tore down the wall, some of the fence came down, so they decided to let's repair it right. Let's do it the way it was, and so they painted it and they stuccoed it, and they were putting it back together the way it was when they got red tide. I think restoration of the Latia is very critical for the security and privacy of the clients and their neighbors, because they have, there's dogs, they have dogs that they rescue and they need special attention. The neighbors have the support of restoring the wall, the fence above the wall, and that's important for them too, because as you saw, there's a couple letters from neighbors that want this to be restored because it affects their privacy as well. Restoration is very consistent with the historics because it was there. It's been there for over 30 years. We don't know, when they bought the house, it was there. That was their private sanctuary. That sanctuary disappeared, all of a sudden. And I think that Latia fence has a lot of character, even though it's non-conforming, but in my opinion, the whole historic district is non-conforming, and that's what makes it very unique. It's like, I like living in South Capitol because there's streets that are packed with houses and no, 0 lot lines. They're beautiful. There's old rock walls. It'd be a shame to see those gone. But anyway, I think the failure to restore the fence is inconsistent with the historics because the aesthetics of it adds to the neighbors, and in the privacy it adds to the clients, and that is their backyard. It is their front yard and backyard because the nature of that property.
Thank you. Board members, questions, comments? Member Benvenu.
I suppose this is just a comment, really. I certainly sympathize with the applicant in this case. If it's true that they bought the property with that fence on it, but it seems to me nonetheless that the board has to approach this now that the Latias have been taken down as, in essence, a request to increase the height of the wall, not just to restore it to what it was previously. Because it sounds as if it's 30 years or less that the Latias were there, so it's not historic in and of itself. and there's no reason or justification for protecting it on that basis. And if we approach it as if you were coming to us with the wall as it currently exists and asking to have the latillas added to that, it seems to me that we would deny that request on the basis that the exception criteria would not be met. At least I would. And I'm compelled to feel that that's the same outcome in this case, given the circumstances, even though I understand the unfortunate nature of that for the property owner.
Your comments, Member Guida?
I agree that I too am sympathetic with the property owners not knowing that this was a circumstance, and certainly, it's the right move, regardless of how this happened. This is a non-conforming wall height and should be reviewed by this board. And certainly we have an exceptions process that allows applicants to request permission for higher walls. I think, looking at this objectively, I see owners who acquired the property not knowing about this. I see, in these photos, these before photos, where the latillas are on top of the wall, kind of clean application, and one in which the historic character of the wall is preserved and not marred by the latillas on top. It's a very clear difference between what's new and what's old. And to me, there's no adverse effect on the historic nature of that wall because of the way that this has been designed back in the 80s or whenever it was done. Looking through the exception criteria, there are a number of circumstances that I agree with entirely. There are 5 exception criteria listed for this case. The fact that the applicant does not have a backyard, that this is primarily their outdoor private space and has been since they've owned the house, I think it's a very good reason. Does not harm the public by having this up. It doesn't block traffic. We still kind of can appreciate the historic wall. And I would say that, the last point I'll make is that, as I understand it, a lot of the wall height calculations are based on existing structures. Those were built at all different times by individuals who constructed walls even before we had this ordinance. So I'm sympathetic to an adjustment and an exception being made for heights of walls.
Thank you, Member Guida. Any other comments? Yes, Member Larson.
Thank you. I feel that with the comments that have been provided by the neighbors in support of restoring the wall to its original appearance, or its appearance of 30 years, I really don't see a fault, or as Anthony had said, an adverse effect. I think this wall was not, bothering anybody for as long as it was there, and I actually appreciate the dimension that the latillas add to it, with it being a more rustic property with orchard trees. So for me, I find it to be a fine, thing to approve.
Thank you. Anyone from the public wishing to speak? No one. I think that for me, I think it's kind of unusual in this area, in the Longa Spot area, to put latillas on a wall. There are other solutions in this district that I have seen, and that is oftentimes if they want to increase the wall height, they might use some kind of wrought iron, even though that's a see-through element and doesn't give the full privacy that your clients are probably seeking, but it would keep the dogs from jumping the wall. I don't know what direction the board is going to take, but I don't know if you've lived here all your life, Mr. Trujillo, but really that this area, you know how the walls have crept up in Santa Fe. And in this area, really, the walls were, in many areas, really, in Santa Fe, they had no walls, and then they started getting built, and then they started going higher and higher, and everybody wants, now Santa Fe is identified by walls, and by high walls in many areas. So I do appreciate your client's dilemma, but those are simply my comments, and I don't vote except in case of a tie. And I don't think there's going to be a tie because there's 5 people here this evening, but for whatever it's worth, those are my comments. Yes, Member Katz.
Yeah, I understand that there is a limit on the wall height that is there for a good reason, and this street is so consistently lower than what the applicant wants. Everybody would like privacy, and if I want more privacy was always a valid reason to get rid of the rule, and the rule is meaningless. And I don't see how we could approve raising the height of the wall beyond what the limit is. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I will entertain a motion at this time.
Madam Chair, have we had public comment on this?
Yes, I asked for public comment, and there was none.
Wonderful.
Member Katz?
Yes, in case number 2022-005189, HDRB at 330 Don Cabrera Place, I would move to deny the application on the basis of that the criteria for the exception to have the wall above the allowable height have not been met.
Second.
Seconded by Member Benvenue. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Trujillo. Any discussion items? Yes, did you have a question, Mr. Trujillo?
I do have a question. I just want to clarify for the record that the documents I found that the main house is non-contributing and the garage is contributing. And I printed this thing from the city website, but it's been consistent with the permitting that they have received. So I just wanted to clarify that. Why it was the whole property is contributing when this map shows it's...
Angela, do you have comments in reference to that? Please speak right into that mic.
Yes, sometimes, unfortunately, our city map, it doesn't represent updates to historic status of structures. And in this case, the map shows that he's provided shows that the house is non-contributing, but in the historic the building inventory, it is contributing, and it discusses the yard wall as built at the same time as the house.
So you're saying they're both contributing?
Yes.
Thank you.
Which isn't to say, well, I won't go there, but according to our records that we're going by, that map is always subject to change, and that's one of the first lines of work for us as staffers is to verify that. That's why you're seeing a lot of status reviews. So we don't have certainty necessarily from our map.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you, Mr. Trujillo.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, you know, that the pentile is part of the addition of that house. And then the older part of the house that actually sits on Houghton is made out of adobe or has a fatter wall. And I would assume it's an adobe. So just for the record, you know. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion items? Yeah? Anything under discussion?
Madam Chair, no.
Matters from the board? I just wanted to ask a question. Are we going to resume going on the van, the entire board, for field trips?
I have been notified that the van is working. I have not tested it. I was notified earlier yesterday, and we've had a couple issues with vehicles as soon as we get them back. I'm going to check it out, and we will see. I'm going to poll the board just on comfortability, and we'll keep an eye on the cases as we move forward with the van.
We can even do it right this minute. Are you all comfortable with going on the van, or would you rather stay on your personal vehicles? Member Guida? You want? Either way. So it looks like, and Member Larson? Oh, so it looks like personal cars, they still want to remain with personal car traveling.
Okay.
Field trips. So, thank you. Our next meeting will be June the 14th, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn. And we are at 7:41.
So moved.
A roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 Thank you very much, and thank you, board members and staff.